So I'm from Rightmove. I've got a vague idea some of you have may heard of Rightmove, but just to get started, how many of you have looked at a property on Rightmove to find a place to live? Cool. How many of you have looked at a property you have no hope ever of being able to afford? Yeah, we all do it. I don't know how much time we're wasting, but at Rightmove is quite massive. So, hey, let's look at that bug on that pitch. Oh, look at the bathroom. Um, we spend quite a bit of time over there. So Rightmove is a pretty simple thing. We've got two sides of people. On one hand, we've got buyers, sellers, renters, and landlords. For today, we're going to simplify and just call those home mover on one hand. And on the other hand, we've got estate agents and property developers. Again, we'll just look at agents for now. And it's pretty simple business model, really. Buyers and home movers come to Rightmove because that's where property have been since 2000. And agents list on Rightmove because that's where users are coming to see. So it's a nice generous circle. One side benefit from the others, and in the middle, Rightmove is quite happy to keep everybody happy. But it's also a bit of an odd relationship because even if we're really keen to keep home mover very happy, we're also very aware that it's the other side that's paying our salaries. So it's not quite a balanced relationship. But also, if the home movers stop being happy, then nobody's paying and nobody's buying our salaries. So that's a bit of a challenge. Designing any service is really hard because you need to think about what's good for your users, what's good for your business, and if you only do one of those two, you're dead. So you need to find the tiny bit in the middle. But if you're designing a marketplace, you're bringing another set of people into the mix, and that creates even more chances to do something that's on 2/3 great, but 2/3 great is also not good. So you need to find that tiny bit in the middle. So overall, the challenge is Rightmove is massive, tons of money, tons of customers, tons of visits. And there's a bit of a mentality, if it's not broken, why try to fix it? So, we don't do any changes carelessly because we don't want to break up a good things. But also, we do need to make changes because everybody's expectation and experiences need to move. So we need to evolve our product as well. So how can we change the engine when the plane is flying? And what can we do when user and customer needs appear to be clashing? Well, the main thing is we need to adapt our approach to the risk. And what do I mean by risk? By risk, I mean anything that could threaten Rightmove business interest or our customers' business interest. So customers is estate agent, to simplify. So it's not just things that actually threaten their interest, but also things that may lead them to believe that their interest might be threatened. And that's quite important because some of it is rational, some of it is emotional, and we need to manage all of that. So today I'm going to be talking about 3 approaches plus 1 on how to navigate all that. So the plus 1 is you start by researching each side of the marketplace. Then the first approach, if it's low risk, is some simple about launching and measuring. Medium risk, and I've got a clicker, is similar, but with a lot more caution and communication. And high risk is where I'll talk to you about experimental products. So let's dive straight in. What do I mean by researching each side? Probably familiar with those things. As a Frenchman in the UK, I never know which side the cars are going to come. So I always need to look both ways because you never know. It's actually a good habit because sometimes you got one-way streets anyway. So we need to research our home movers. And because about 90% of the property for sale in the UK are on Rightmove, researching Rightmove home movers is very, very wide and complicated. It's the archetypal designing for everyone. It's not quite everyone. It's everyone. We found a property that is on Rightmove using a digital service and so on. But it's still very, very wide mix of users. So what do? We look at analytics just to see what people actually do on the site, and we try to find correlations and things that go together, or just check things that go up and down. We look at App Store reviews. So App Store reviews are quite interesting. You can get useful information and insight in aggregate, but they do tend to be quite polarized. So if you look at the first one, 5 stars, Rightmove been brilliant. Thank you to all. If you look at the last one, 1 star, awful app, and my favorite quote ever, whoever designed this doesn't want people to find property and hates human being. So that's a bit harsh. And if you read this comment, it's just saying that, I wish floor plans were easier to find. So still a bit mean. But anyway, we do get lots of stuff. And it's also a great way to quickly get feedback if something is broken, because they will let you know. We do lots of surveys, either on the site. So this one is coming in a few weeks. Lucky you are to see it first. Or we do it by email, thanks to everybody who consent to receive marketing email on Rightmove. Thank you. We do the usual user testing and post-it note to see what's going on. And we do interviews. And we like to do diary studies as well. So this is one my colleague is running right now. And we use WhatsApp this time. The reason we do diary studies is because moving home is an experience that takes quite a bit of time. It's not something you do in an hour in a session at home. It's something that's going to take you days and days and weeks and maybe years. And having diary study allows us to get a pulse and get information from participant as it happens, blow by blow, not how they think it's going to go, no, how they think it went, but literally when it happened, we get to hear what they say. And we also get some insight into the emotional state that people are going through, because, you know, surprise, surprise, finding a property in the UK, whether you rent or buying, whether you're super broke or super rich, it's still super stressful. Still probably more stressful if you're broke, but it's not great for anyone, really. So what do we do with all that? We try to aggregate all that into models, such as an experience map, where we'll try to map a journey for one kind of users from the beginning to the end, not everything involving our site, actually surprisingly little of that journey touching our site. Try to map the objective that it's trying to do, and for each objective, what are the tasks they do and what are the pain points they go through. So that's our consumers, which we call user. And I promise I wouldn't use consumer and customers because I keep mixing them up. But if I say consumer, you will know I mean users as in real people. Not that we consider agents not to be real people, but let's face it. So our beloved agents, we also need to do research with them. So we do roughly the same thing that we do with our users, but we tend to add an extra dose of on-site visit, because it's actually quite important to see how they work together, how their setup is arranged, and that's definitely not how they work. That's just a Google picture where everything is nice and clean, because in reality, people will have lots of notes and scribble things on paper, shout things from one desk to the other, and that's all very, very important, because Rightmove also do a lot of product directed to agents that the public doesn't get to see because it's professional tools, but that's also a big side of our business. Another thing we use for research, not the actual team, just to be clear, they don't look nearly as nice, and I didn't want to put anybody's face without asking them, so thank you for stock pictures. It's our sales team. We have hundreds of people talking to our most estate agents in the UK on an ongoing basis, so we've got a direct line to what they think, what they want, and how they feel. And that's also something that's really, really important for us when we design things. So now that we've done our research, we understand our users, we understand our customers, and we're ready to design and launch something. So how do we go about that? First approach, when it's low risk, just go ahead and do it. Launch and measure. So it's a simple A/B test. When you think it's very unlikely to mess up anything big, just identify the problem, pick a metric, design variants, release to a fraction of our audience. And we're lucky at Rightmove that we got enough traffic that we can do tests very quickly and still get significant results. And then we see if the change worked. If it didn't, we roll back. Next level up is, what do we do when it's a bit more risky? And the weird thing with Rightmove is that a lot of things tend to be riskier than it looks like once you start considering all the aspects of the marketplace. Because it's not one side we need to keep happy, it's not even two, it's those three. So here's a simple example. I'm going to talk to you about Carousel. So I'm a big fan of the website called shouldIuseacarousel.com. If you haven't been to it, it's got a good experience, but this is actually one of the few exceptions to the rule where a carousel actually makes sense. So we know photographs of property are a very key piece of information for all a home mover. That's the first thing they want to see. They want to see more than one. They want to quickly see that, and that's where they start their journey. That's the first thing they look at before they decide, should I even consider that property further, or should I just keep scrolling? So we're building a carousel. So here's the search result on mobile for Rightmove, as it is now. Yep. So you've done a search, you arrive on the search result, you see a lot of very affordable properties, and you decide, oh, I want to see what's inside that house. You click into it, you need to wait a bit for it to load, especially if you're on mobile, on the train or something. And then you can swipe across those pictures and see what's inside that house. But that's not really great because that's something people do again and again on our site, looking at pictures. So we've figured out, and it's not going to win any UX award, but could we have a carousel of pictures straight from the search results? Again, breaking, but that's what we're trying to do. I know maybe that's all you need to do to see that that swimming pool is just way too small and you're going to skip that property. You don't need to see all the details about it. Just no, swimming pool, not good enough. So in theory, that doesn't look like, oh my God, this is business shattering. Should be pretty safe to release because our assumption, and that's based on existing research as well, this is making things more efficient for users. So they have more time instead of wasting their time looking at property they actually don't want to see, going back and forth and waiting for page to load. They'll have a bit more time to look at other property that might be more relevant to them and then might contact the agent more, which is what our customers really, really care. So that seems to make Rightmove a more valuable service. Everybody's happy, right? So let's break it through. Home mover wanted to go to a detailed page to see photos. Yes, that's basically the point of it. But what we tell agents to look at how well their listing is performing is exactly how many people see that detail page. And we give them like nice little report like this one you can see when they put it on the market and then interest fading, and you can see when they discounted the property, another big spike, and so on. So that starts to be a concern. But do we even know if the average detail page will really go down because of the carousel thing? Maybe it will for the property people don't want to see, but the theory that they will have more time to see property they actually want to see. So that might actually not happen, this number going down. But then more importantly, we need to think about the metric, because that metric of wasting people time to go see a detail page is not something that's good for anybody in our business, neither users, agents, or Rightmove. So can we think about a better metric that would either replace or complement this one? And there's a lot we can tell, and that could be very useful to agents if, a lot of people were interested in that property, started scrolling, but nobody contacted or went further because they stopped at the third picture, because that third picture is, I don't know, the bathroom looking terrible. And that's actually one of the massive reasons in London why people don't want to rent, is if the bathroom is really unacceptable, because it's also used as a way to judge or whether the landlord is taking care of the property. If the bathroom is awful, you can probably sure, and if he's been confident enough to put that photo on Rightmove, you can be sure there are lots of things that are not right in the property. Another thing that could be a potential problem is we've got two kinds of listing on Rightmove. So again, this is from the mobile website. This is a standard listing, and this is a premium listing. So I won't bore you with a detailed pricing model, but basically the premium one is more expensive. And what you get for that is a listing that's a bit bigger and that has this extra row of pictures. And we've built carousel for both. So, the same benefits you get for the standard and for the listing. And actually, for the premium one, we even made it better because we needed to have something happen to that small row of pictures if you move the carousel. So it seemed like a win-win, right? We've improved both versions, so everybody should be happy. But the way we sell those premium listings is we tell agents, well, if you get into that, you're going to get X many more attention. And maybe by increasing the experience on both, if we've increased the standard more than we increase the premium, or not quite the right level, maybe we've just reduced the gap between the engagement we get from those two products. And suddenly, while improving everything, we somewhat shot ourselves in the foot and going to make it harder to justify buying that premium product. So that's not great, that kind of feeling. And when you're talking the kind of numbers I was mentioning before, that's big enough to give everybody pause. We don't want a lot of unhappy customers, and we don't want to be responsible for decreasing revenue. And often that's all it takes to kill any kind of new ideas, because nobody wants to take the risk and be the one to say, you know what, your great idea, we lost that much money. But again, if we don't change, we die medium term. So we still need to keep pushing. So how do we know when we can actually carry on? And what do we do in that case? Well, that's when we try to find a way to find more information. That's why we do the proceed with caution bit. First of all, we identify potential risk in advance. And that's where talking to our customer marketing colleagues is really, really important, because they will be able to flag, oh, this bit, agents won't like that one bit. And we get a lot of understanding from that, and we get to really understand. And through conversation, we can actually go through what is a metric they actually care about. Maybe there's something we've been talking about for a long time. Maybe there's something else. Going to the bottom of this is really helpful. And then they help us. Actually, in this case, they just decide themselves because that's their job. How do we address concern from agents? Because even putting something live on site on the test, if it's something that's going to get agents upset, we need to have a plan. So if it's quite risky, we will flag in advance. We might just email everybody and tell them, this is what we're doing, why and how. Or if it's not that risky, you might say, you know what, no need to scare everybody in advance, but we'll need to plan a rational and make sure everybody who can talk to agent know what's going on and they have answers. If an angry agent call his account manager or customer support, those guys need to know what's going on. They can't be code short about, oh, the website does that, no idea. Don't know how long it's going to do, don't know why, no. We need to help give them, this is what we're doing, this is why we think it's going to be good for your business, and this is how long it's going to be tested. Then we run the test, and then we see where we stand, and we decide next step. Maybe it's going to leave, maybe it's going to die, maybe we'll need to change it and improve it, but at least we've moved over that hump of just being scared and not trying anything. Right, so last option we've got is when we want to do something that's a bit more risky. Well, the question we ask in that case is, could we do much better? So we're not talking a tiny, tiny bit better, we're talking much better. So we're wondering, Rightmove has been in the business for 19 years now. I had to do math in my head. Can we increase key KPIs by delivering a better, quite different, and more modern product? We had lots of ideas and experience based on our research and experience, and we think they really got leg, but they're too big to be just an iteration. The problem when you do just iteration is you start somewhere here, and if you keep experimenting a tiny bit to the right, tiny bit to the left, see what improves your thing, you're gonna end up somewhere there, but you're never gonna reach the actual mountain, which is where you really wanna go for your bit of design, because while you're trying to cross that, you're gonna get a lot of resistance because things are gonna look bad for a bit. So you wanna do something different. And we knew that faking it wouldn't do. We wanted something live. When it's something as important as property search, again, it's something we cannot just test in 2 seconds. We need to have people live through it, really use it for real. So we built an app. It's not the most quick way to do things, but we basically used our research and our IT to design and build and launch a brand new app that would be trying to start from scratch. What would it be if we could start from the beginning? And we launched that. Yay! And why did we do that? Well, the reason we've done that is because once it's live, you can actually research it for real. Again, out of the lab, out of surveys, real people in their real life with all the stress and all the challenge that it involves researching it. So we could wire all the analytics we wanted, so we know exactly what were people doing and how that worked. And we could see patterns people would try. So, for example, carousel was also in there, so we can see people would do the carousel, saying what do they do afterward, how does that impact everything else, and basically that give us rationale why we should do it. And the finding was, yes, our KPIs could be much higher, and we're talking several times higher, which if you've been in an established business for 20 years is pretty big news. And because it was live, we could do our standard interviews and comparative diary study. So we got lots of qualitative insight, and we could understand people's journey. We could see how the feature we delivered made sense in their life. And that gave us a story of why we think worked. So it's not only, yes, those things work, we've got the numbers to prove it, but also we understand why they work and why that was great. So that was a big success. So that's how it ends. That was always the point. It was always planned from the very beginning. We're going to do an experimental app. It's going to be live for a bit. We're going to learn tons of stuff, and then we're going to pull the plug. Doesn't mean it's not heartbreaking, especially at Christmas, because we put a lot of effort into it. But that was always the plan. We do it, we learn things, and we pull the plug. So we didn't want to have to maintain and support 2 full apps going forward. That was something different. But we've taken lots of learning, and we're bringing things back into a main product. So what are the benefits of doing an experimental product? Basically, you can be smaller, less protective, and happier, like the baby hedgehog. So it can fly under the radar, almost undercover, kind of small scale. We didn't advertise it. We didn't say, hey, Rightmove is doing a brand new thing, everybody try it. No, it's like, we even wondered, like, should we even say it's Rightmove? I think we did in the end because it just more transparent, but we certainly didn't make a big deal about it. It was safer and risk-free space. We could build whatever we wanted, however we wanted it. So we set ourselves free of 20 years of tech debt and all kind of requirements. And because we assigned a dedicated team to it, it didn't get prioritized. Where any new idea came in, that still didn't put that project off track. But it also has some drawbacks. I mean, some efforts and resources are not directly going into your main product. The product can diverge quite a lot. Merging the good bits is non-trivial. You can sometimes create an us versus them team relationship, where you got one team working on the cool stuff and the old team that maybe have been there longer working on the business as usual boring stuff that just really demotivate them. So you have to be careful of that. And also, because you're doing it public, everybody can see what you're doing. So if you got a brand new great idea, sometimes people steal it and build it before you. That happens. So we're Just Eat. So I'll give you guys a few takeaways. Designing for marketplace, summing it up. You need great background research on all sides. You just can't do without it. You need to understand all sides of the equation, and that also includes the business side, which I didn't talk too much about today. You always need to think about impact on users, customers, and business. So not just doing the research, but while you're building things, while you're testing things, while you're releasing things, you need to build that view of the 360 view of your product. Usually, everybody's looking at one side of it. My job title say consumer. But I cannot build anything for consumer or users if I don't think about those two other half. So you need to constantly and widely collect and share information internally and externally across all your team, even a lot of people that have nothing to do with product, research, marketing, whatever. A lot of people can give you lots of useful information in words, but you also need to communicate outwards so they could communicate with the rest of the world. And last, or maybe not last, you have to build a case for change again and again and again. Measuring, researching, communicate, iterate, keep building that, keep explaining why you're doing it, keep explaining why you reasonably confident things are going to work, keep explaining why you do if it doesn't, and keep explaining that this is normal, that you can't guarantee before anything go on test that everything's going to be rosy. We do need to keep experimenting. And if it's too risky, because you just can't solve all sides of that equation at once, maybe try to branch out with an experimental product so you can temporarily relax some of this constraint. Take some learnings and then try to apply them slowly into your main product. But that's quite a slow process when you're talking a big product. Literally that takes years. So for me, that's quite interesting new thing, because I used to be a lot in consulting. When you do project for a couple of weeks, this is something that takes years if you really want a big impact. That's it. Thank you very much.
So we have some question time. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully technology will behave. It means you have a few more minutes to go on Slido and add any questions or vote. So the Slido code is Q891. Slido or slido.com. Oh, we have some questions. Do you want to pick any?
How much do you trust secondhand data? Yeah, how much do I trust secondhand data from the sales team? Enough to think that we need to do something about it. Not necessarily, I wouldn't expect to get actual numbers from people, necessarily a super deep understanding of necessarily all the needs. They do get, they're on the front line. So anything a customer is not happy about, they hear about. So anytime they flag something, it's probably something we need to be aware of. Doesn't necessarily mean we can't do it or we need to do something else. We don't tend to get very specific things about things. We work in aggregate mostly. So if a lot of agents start complaining about something, that's when it starts to bubble up with us. If it's just one agent having a bug in his thing, that will be handled by support. Property sale data price was made open. This enabled home buying marketplace to offer more for their users. Yeah, sorry if it stopped moving. What could government do in this space? Sorry, so home buying marketplace reacting to property sales data was made open. So sold prices are public in this country since many years, which means you can go and peek. Any of your friends know exactly how much they bought for their house. It can be quite addictive, and then you realize how much people pay for your house before you bought it, and then you cry. So I don't know what else government could do. That database doesn't really tell you much, though. It will tell you this address sold on that date for that price. But if you want to know more about how many bedroom, what it looked like inside, well, that's where you need to come to Rightmove, where we'll try to mix and match those data with previous listing we used to have. How do you conduct diary studies on WhatsApp? We invite people into chats. So we recruit participants the normal way with recruiters, that we get their numbers, and then we start doing that. So we still have a phone call to brief them at the beginning, to explain how it works, and we give them a structure of the things we want to hear about, how often we want to hear about, and something like that. And we tend to also do a debrief interview at the end to go back on the things that they talked about. Were
you going to take another question?
I can.
Final question.
Okay. So I'll do two because I'm nasty. I don't know. I wasn't there. Were you worried building RentLondon would cannibalize traffic? Not really, because it was not promoted very much, and that was it. And for if our customer found out, because it's not something was secret either, you know, if customer found out, say, well, you get your advertisement in one more places for the same price. So on the top of thing, it does look like a big deal. If we were seeing tons of traffic going to places where we have less premium product and stuff like that, that probably would have been something we need to be careful about, but that wasn't the case. Thank you.
Thank you all. So we are going to take a very, very quick break only to grab some more pizza because we don't want it to go away. So we're going to set it up for the next speakers. So don't run away, please, and grab some more pizza and come back in 5 minutes. Yeah, okay, fine. guys. Sorry, we'll have more time for networking, but take your seats again. So we have one more talk. I don't know. You can sit here. Oh no, yeah, James is sat there. Careful of. I saw the wine falling. Any is fine. Hello. Yeah, it's working. Okay, I just wanted to make two more quick announcements. One thing that I forgot to say earlier is we have another event that is being planned by Anya for the research thing as well. It is going to be about VR or virtual reality, and it will be in July, right? 23rd of July at Facebook. Yeah, more details will be posted on Meetup soon, but that's one thing. And the other thing I wanted to say, which these guys will remind you again, is after this talk, since we do have some time, it'd be great to use this as a knowledge sharing opportunity. So we have a little wall over there. We will move the chair so you guys can huddle over while you're having some more drinks and pizza. It's just about sharing techniques that you've tried out, research focused, obviously, and talking to people about it. I'm going to now introduce our final talk for the day. We have James, who is a senior UX designer working on the restaurant side. And we have Noel, who is a senior UX researcher also working on the restaurant side. And they will be doing a talk together about focused on sprinting, some of the benefits of it, but also some of the things you could lose by it. So I'm going to let them take on. Yeah. And here's the clicker.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Noel. Great to be here tonight. So what we are going to talk about tonight. So we are going to give you a quick overview of how research evolved over the time here at Just Eat.
Just gonna move that mouse thing.
So we are going to give you a quick overview of how research evolved here at Just Eat, our experience running design sprints, and what we could miss by sprinting and how to get it back. But first, I'd love to have a quick show of hands and have a view of who have ever used a food delivery service in his life. Cool, quite a few people. And how about Just Eat? Wow, okay, great. And if you love food like us, raise your hands. Yes, awesome. So our vision at Just Eat is serving the world's greatest menu brilliantly. We connect tens of thousands of restaurants with millions of customers and hundreds of different cuisines.
Cool. So I hope that sounds like it's working right. Brilliant. So here at Just Eat in our UX and design team, we have over 25 people working in the team. And it's a mixture of UX designers, UI designers, copywriters, and of course, researchers. And we're primarily split into three separate streams. We have the customer consumer side. We also do a lot of work with couriers. And then, as Twitter said, myself and Noel are primarily based in the restaurant space. And there's also a few other areas that we also deal with. But these are the three main ones that we work with. So before we... I've got it upside down. There we go. So before we start looking at what we do today, I thought it'd just be a really good idea to kind of roll back a few years and look at what we used to do back in the day. So I joined Just Eat just over 2 years ago. And like I said, I'm a senior UX designer here. And what would happen is, as a UX designer, you would be given a project to work on, usually one, sometimes two. And you would be kind of doing all of the UX for that project up until you reached a point where you decided you needed to do some research. And at that point, you would then engage with the research team. And you would engage with the research team first off to understand the actual availability of any researchers available. And then if you managed to get yourself a researcher, you would then kind of sit down with them and try and work out exactly what it was you wanted to answer and the best way to get those results. And then the researcher will go off and create a discussion guide. And they'd also do all of the associated research ops. So in this case, a lot of that was spent around actually recruiting restaurants. Because we generally used to go out and do restaurant visits, this would mean we'd pick an area we want to go and see, and we'd usually do two different locations for each research piece. And then the research would actually have to sit down and phone up probably over 100 restaurants, trying to find restaurants that A, will pick up their phone because they're really busy people, B, who are actually interested in doing research. And then when we got down to the ones who were interested in doing research, those who were free on the day we wanted to do research, free at the time slots that we wanted to do it, and also to ensure we had a nice balance of different cuisine types, restaurant sizes, turnover, all of those things, to make sure we had a nice mixture of different restaurants that we were talking to. So assuming all of that went well, we would then go out and actually do some restaurant visits. So what I want you to do now is imagine that it's a cold Wednesday morning in February, and myself and Noel have gone out to go do some restaurant visits. We were originally going to have two of our stakeholders come out with us, and they were both really interested to do the 12 p.m. session, which is good. It's great. They want to come out and join us, but not particularly great for four of us to go in and see one restaurant at the same time. But luckily / unluckily, they realized that in order to actually get to this session and spend time in the session, it would probably take about 3 hours out of their day, which they just couldn't give up for today. So unfortunately, they couldn't make it in the end. Anyway, it's now 9:55 a.m. and we've made it to our first restaurant. The shutters are down, which is not particularly a problem because we know they're not going to open till 11. And from talking to the restaurant beforehand, they said they generally get there about 10 a.m. to open up and set up the restaurant beforehand. However, it's now 5 past and there's still no restaurant. I'm getting a little bit worried because it's quite cold outside, I'm not going to lie. So I've decided to phone up the restaurant just to try and see where they are. Maybe they're en route. They're not picking up at all. So just kind of hope they are actually going to turn up and that they're not just ignoring you. At 20 past, the restaurant owner does actually turn up. And he's really, really, really apologetic. But unfortunately, the night before, he had to work till 3 a.m. So perhaps unsurprisingly, he needed to sleep in this morning and just slept straight through his alarm. But anyway, by 10:30, we're now actually into our research session. And it's going really well. We're getting some really great insights. But because our 12 p.m. session is actually quite far away, we actually need to wrap up and close up at 11 a.m. pretty much on the dot. So then when we finish that session, we move on to our 12 p.m. We actually get there a little bit late because, well, buses in London, they're not great. But it's the only way we can get between different restaurants. So in this case, we turn up, the restaurant's already there, it's open, it's great. So we walk in, it turns out the restaurant owner is the only person who's actually in at the moment, and that's because it's quiet, so he doesn't see the point in actually hiring any staff. So this is great in terms of he's there and we can engage with him, but it also means every time a customer comes in, he needs to go and engage with his customer because, of course, he's running a business and actually wants to make some sales. So again, we get a really good session going on. We learn lots of things about whatever it is that we've taken in. But it's not constant. We're always getting little interruptions, which means when we start getting really deep into a problem, suddenly we've got an interruption and we lose it and we have to start all over again. Anyway, session goes relatively well. And so we decide to move on to our 2 p.m. session. So then we rock up, we get here, we walk in, and about 2 seconds later, we turn around and walk out. It turns out the head chef has phoned up sick. The only other person who can actually cook everything on the menu is the owner. So that's it, session over. So rather than going through and talk about every single one of these, we're just going to go for the main point that what we need to understand is that restaurant owners and managers are very, very busy people. It can be very hard to actually get them engaged to do the research. And when we actually go there, there's no guarantee they will be there. We are not the most important thing in their life. It's also incredibly time consuming to set up, particularly because the restaurants are scattered all over and we have to phone them up. And because of the logistics in trying to find restaurants that are close enough to each other that we can walk between and also open at the relevant times, it's something that third-party recruiters were never particularly keen on engaging with us with. Finally, restaurants are full of, well, not finally, but restaurants are also full of distractions. So even when you're in there, there's always things happening, customers turning up, staff asking questions. It's never an entire session just focusing on it. And also stakeholders really struggle to attend some of these sessions just because it's quite far out and it means they have to dedicate a lot of their time to come. So when they come, it tends to be for the whole day, which is great, but they can't always do it. But even with all of these challenges and struggles, it's still really, really, really useful. We always get interesting insights from going out and doing research. And because of this, researching restaurants generally seen as a success within the business, and more teams were interested and just seeing what was happening, how successful it was. So they started reaching out to the research team going, actually, I want some of that research as well. I've got this interesting challenge and problem coming up. I think it's best we check it with restaurants first. So it meant the research team started working on more and more projects. But understandably, we only have a limited number of research. Sadly, we don't have an infinite resource. And researchers, you guys are really hard to recruit. And so it just became a problem where we just couldn't necessarily get research out quickly enough So there was this really big potential that research would end up becoming a bottleneck on projects, or you'd potentially have to skip it, which is something we did not want to do. We understand just how important research is. So rather than sticking to the model that we've been using for years, we decided to change. So this is when we started sprinting. So the way our sprint works here at Just Eat is we have a 2-week time period for each sprint. And as a UX designer, in these 2 weeks, what we'll do is I'll work with the stakeholders, try and work out what the focus is. We'll ideate upon it, evolve it, change it. We'll create whatever kind of prototype we need. That could be high fidelity prototypes, it could be paper, it could be literally just research questions. And then there's a couple of days for testing, and then analysis and playback afterwards, and then we'll start again. And the really good thing from my point as a designer is I know those 2 days of research, I know exactly when they're going to happen, and they're always there. I could go in with a tiny problem or a larger problem, and because I know I won't be the only person researching there. There'll be lots of different project streams going through this research, which means it's always available and multiple teams can always get access to it. And from a researcher's viewpoint, it's also a lot easier to do ops because we have steady times, steady slots, and third-party recruiters will now work with us because we're bringing them actually into our research labs, which are literally underneath you all. Or in the floor below on the 5th floor, we've got some really good research labs, which are great. So kind of just to play back all of the benefits that we got by moving into a sprinting world was the restaurants are much more focused. They're much more engaged. They're sitting here. They don't have customers coming in. We actually found out, surprisingly, they're actually more likely to attend these sessions than if we go out to the restaurants and they potentially cancel on us last minute. We generally get research on more projects, and also each project also gets more research. And finally, and this has been a really good one, is that more and more stakeholders can actually watch. They can just pop in for half an hour, half a session, or they can literally spend the entire day in the observation room doing other work and observing. So it was like, this is great. We started sprinting, we've got all this research. What could go wrong?
So let's take a step back and kind of think again of what James was mentioning earlier. Conducting research with our restaurant partners can be challenging. But in fact, what's challenging, that's their environments, that's their context. Looks like it's crazy. Everybody is running everywhere. People are ordering. If 1 or 2 orders goes late, everything goes late. People calling in asking, where's my food? I don't like those days. So this is the reality of our restaurant partners. So they may be looking after different type of orders coming through different delivery systems. They may be dealing with problem in a kitchen, dealing with problem with their staff like sickness, lateness, and they may feel overwhelmed by all the factors that they have to contend with. The smooth running of their restaurant, unexpected event, and the weather as well. So if it's raining heavily outside, then it might be really tricky for the drivers to get around, and this may also affect the smooth running of their restaurant. So this raises a question: how could we still get some rich insights when we are in a sterile lab environment? How could we bring the context into the lab so that we can also make sure we get some rich and impactful insights? As researchers, we constantly have to come up with new ways to get some rich insights and to accommodate some of the constraints. So what we're going to do today is to show you 4 different ways we try to bring back the context into our lab so that we can still get some rich insights. Practice number 1, conduct research to allow natural interactions with the device. When we conduct some research, traditionally we'll be sitting side by side with the participant in a quiet and calm environment. And obviously, our role is to make sure the participant is feeling comfortable, relaxed, so that they can open up and they can share some honest feedback with us. But the reality is, if they interact with our device, they're unlikely to be sitting down. They will be standing. So what we're doing now, so we may start our introduction sitting, but then we move to the counter and we have our participants standing in a more animated position so that they can still interact with the device more naturally. Practice number 2, iterate quickly by building a realistic device that enables natural interaction. So at the top, where you can see, it's the Just Eat touchscreen. So this is a touchscreen our restaurant partners have in their restaurant so that they can manage the Just Eat orders, but they can also communicate with their customers if necessary. And by nature and for security reason, this system is locked down. So we had to come up with some new ways to be able to build, test, and iterate at sprint speed. So we started testing our prototype on iPads. But as you could probably imagine, so this is now again a natural way of interacting with the device because all restaurant partners want to hold the iPad. So what we wanted to do, and our main consideration when trying to find out some new ways to test a prototype quickly, was first to making sure that all participants would be not holding the device, and also that we could replicate the right angle so that the visibility and the readability would be exactly the same as the current touchscreen. So we came up with really sophisticated solutions. Some blue tack. So we had some blue tack just stick at the back of our iPad and then just help us to put the iPad on the top of the touchscreen, and just again, simple way to making sure we allow the natural interaction with our device. Practice number 3, include relevant parts of the context to explore the whole experience. So restaurant partners are really static when they are in the restaurant. They are multitasking. They may be in a kitchen with the chef helping with the cooking, or they may be on the phone with the customers, or maybe with the drivers handing the food. So there is a lot of different physical aspects that we need also to take into account if you want to understand the whole experience and the connections between all the different aspects of the product. So we decided to include different parts of the environment. So for example, when they have an orders coming through, they have a sound notification. So it means like they're not waiting in front of their touchscreen for something to happen or for an order coming through. So they can still do their task and know when something is coming. So we decided to include, when possible, a sound notification. And during a project, we wanted to understand also all the activities they engage when they are going through the process of accepting an order. So when they accept an order, there is a ticket that is printed out of the system. So we decided to include that as well during the lab session so that we could also see all the different interaction. And for example, we could see our restaurant partners trying to prioritize all the tickets per location so that the kitchen could cook at the same time all the food that needs to be delivered in the same area. Another simple way as well to bring a bit more of their physical aspect in the lab session is probably to ask them ahead of time to bring some artifacts of the environment. So for example, when we did some visits in the restaurant, we could observe some of the restaurant partners having a notebook where they would be documenting all the interaction with customers. So this could be also a good thing to ask them to bring along to continue the conversation. And for example, if we know they may be using different systems as well in parallel of their current system, we could also ask them to bring the list of all the systems they may use so that we could continue the conversation with them. And I think the first part as well is role play. So as we mentioned, so we wanted to bring a bit more realism, and also they rarely only in the front of the touchscreen, they're multitasking. So we needed as well to find some ways to make them look away from the screen. So what we done, we had, let's say, some people in the team calling during the lab session and pretending to be a customer, let's say asking an update about the food, or we also had the drivers coming and picking up the food. So this just help us navigate the complexities of being in a restaurant partner's environment and just get a richer understanding of their real life. And the last one, practice number 4, explore scenarios during simulated condition of busyness. All restaurant partners may feel slightly stressed or overwhelmed when they are in a busy service. And the way they feel may impact as well the way they will be experiencing using a product. During one project, we wanted to understand what type of notification was important to them, and also which one was worth interrupting them during a busy service. So in our lab session, what we've done is just creating this condition of being busy. For that, we asked them, for example, to recall the last time they felt busy or overwhelmed. And we also, to help us increase the feeling of being busy and add some perceived realism, use a little bit of sound. generator that we use to simulate the sound that they may as well hear when they're in their restaurant. And again, this just help us get them talking and share some real life stories that we could use as well to frame and develop better solutions for them. So here we are, 4 different ways to bring the context of our restaurant partners to the lab. First one, conduct research to allow natural interactions with the device. So it's just about thinking of the way our users will be using the product. So are they really sitting, or maybe they will be standing, maybe they're on the go, or maybe they will be lying down comfortably on their bed. So just trying to think of the natural way for them to interact with the device. Iterate quickly by building a realistic device that enables natural interactions. When running design sprints, speed is key. But I guess what we're trying to do here is kind of making sure that with all the approaches we put in place, this doesn't compromise the quality of the interaction with the device. 3, include relevant part of the context to explore the experience. So when we conduct some research in a lab, so it's not only about how long it will take to complete a task, or if the user really failing or succeeding at a task, we're really trying to consider the whole experience. So think about all the distraction or the interruption they may have as well when they interact with the product, and try to bring some of this aspect as well in their interaction with the device. And the last one, explore scenarios during simulated condition of busyness. So that's the emotional level. So they may feel different emotions when interacting the product, and it's just about thinking about different way they may feel and different way they may be experiencing the product based on their emotion. So we already anticipated some of the question. So would it replace contextual research? Of course not. So we still do field research, and this is one part of the job as well we love, because it just helps us get a good understanding about the context of the environment and the key problems. But when conducting evaluative research, does it help us get closer to the truth? Yes, absolutely. So it just helps us making sure we're taking into account their context, and also making sure that we're discovering how our solution may or may not fit into their life and into their workflow. So it just gives us greater confidence that we are building the right things and we are building the things right. So that's the end of our talk. Thanks for listening. We love to continue the conversation. So if you've tried out any new approaches in your organization, or if you have adapted any traditional research methodology, we'd love to hear them.
Oh yeah, we have charge. I'll just bring Slido up. I don't actually need it. Cool. Cool. I need to. How do I? Oh yeah. I don't know how to use Slido. Okay. Do you guys just want to pick any? No, not many people have voted yet, so.
So I think the first one was about the restaurants from outside of London. Yes, we try and bring them into the lab where possible, but it's generally restricted to easy access to get to London. But that's also why we don't necessarily always do lab research in London. We do have the labs here, which are a great resource. We also have an office in Bristol, and we also have the capabilities to hire labs in other places. And it also means that when we do out and actually do contextual visits, we definitely try and make sure we do those not always in London as well. We're trying to get out and make sure that we are covering differences between big cities, small cities, and rural areas, because we know that's very important to our restaurants.
And that one or that one, take your pick. Or the easy one.
So do you want me to take one?
Yeah.
So how do you script and prepare for these complex sessions, including all the content? Did you need to have multiple people to play? So I don't know, when you say content, do you mean like the physical aspect or bringing the context into the environment of the lab setting?
Yeah, sorry, I think I must have
Okay, cool. That's all right. Yeah.
papers and notifications. It feels like doing theatre almost.
Yeah, so we're not doing that all the time because obviously that would be really time consuming, but we work really collaboratively. So it means that it's not only one researcher considering the script and working on that. So we work collaboratively on the best way to get the answers. And based on what we think is going to be relevant to have for the session, this is the moment where we might bring some more elements as well into the sessions.
There's a question from Hazel.
Thank you, Hazel. So yeah, since you asked restaurants about stressful situations, do you ever encounter frustrated restaurants? Yes. So we see this a lot, and so what we generally try and deal with it is we deal with it up front. So we know there's a likelihood that some of these restaurants are going to have frustrations with us, and so we generally start the session off with talk about your restaurant, kind of what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and there's a whole little sequence of questions we start off with just to let them kind of release it. And then it's kind of going, okay, that's really useful, we'll take some notes, but today we're going to be focusing on this. And so for the most restaurants, that generally works in getting them to kind of like have that little release. But then, yeah, occasionally we will then still get them going off task, and then it's just listening to them for a minute or two and then just trying to quickly pull them back. I can't think of any particular horror cases. It used to be a lot worse before we started asking them those questions up front, and then we worked out that was a much more effective way of doing it.
Oh, there are some interesting questions coming up. Maybe we can pick two more and then go to networking. So this one might be a good one, the topmost question. Explorative, like discovery research, I imagine, versus evaluative. Sorry. Questions.
Do you want that one?
Do you conduct explorative research as well as the evaluative research within Sprint? If yes, can you give an example? Yes, we do some evaluative research. So, for example, at the moment, we're trying to understand a little bit more the usage of our restaurant partner portal. So it means like we need to have a good understanding of the different systems they may be using in parallel, understanding as well the frequency. So what we tend to do as well in general, so maybe looking at the data just to see how they may be using system, and just trying as well as a team to consider all the questions we have at looking at this data, and then going back to some lab session or even doing some restaurant visit to try to understand a little bit more the usage of the product, the difficulties, the challenges, and the main important thing as well for us is understanding the opportunities to make sure that we provide them the right tools to manage and grow their business.
And sorry, just quickly add on to that one, we are not restricted by sprints. Sprints is our primary approach because we find it very efficient. But if for a particularly large discovery piece, we decide it's just not the right tool, we'll go off and we'll go maybe down more traditional kind of longer term projects. So sprinting is ridiculously helpful for us, but it's not the only way we do work.
This might be the last question.
Okay, so the final question, by simulating the experience conducting it inside the office, how do you keep in touch with the real environments and solutions for your customers' needs? And I think that goes back to kind of how Noel ended it. We don't just do sprinting in labs. We still go out and do contextual research, whether that is at the start of a project, in the middle of the project, or at the end of the project when we're near a final state. There's no way we could do it without going out into restaurants. But by doing it in lab, it just helps us to do a lot more research.
Yeah, and I guess it gives us some more ideas as well. So when we want them to bring some artifacts, for example, so it's just understanding as well what they might be using. And things are evolving and changing quite fast as well for them. So it's kind of a keeping touch as well of what's happening in the environment.
Cool. Stay around, network away, and we move some chairs around there so you can use that space. We would love to hear from you, and we'll obviously tweet the output. I wanted to mention one thing which I should have said earlier. We have a volunteer, amazing tweeter today. So if you've been following us on Twitter, you probably have already seen the tweets. We have Rick over here, who has been really helpful. Hey! I think that's everything from us. So yeah, let's network away. Thank you. Thank you all.